Today we're taking a look at the top 20 NHL prospects that are already affiliated with an NHL team. When might they make the jump to the NHL? What kind of impact will they have? We'll discuss all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're taking a look at some of the top prospects that are already affiliated with NHL teams across the league here that will either be having an impact on the NHL as soon as, kind of right now, and some of them are likely going to be jumping more like next year or the year after. Of course, we're basically going off a list here developed by Craig Button at TSN. He recently put out a couple days ago the top 50 NHL affiliated prospects. Just for the sake of time, we're going to cut this down. I may do a part 2, maybe even a part 2 and 3 here over the next little bit, reviewing the other ones. But for today, we're going to take a look at the top 20 just for the sake of time. Of course, a few teams here do have multiple players on this list, including the Ottawa Senators, Minnesota Wild, Detroit Red Wings, the Buffalo Sabres, and New Jersey Devils. So that's 5 teams that have 2 players. So that's half of your top 20 right there. So it goes to show you that they are all teams that have pretty good prospect pools here moving forward. So let's dive in and get started. We're going to work our way from number 1 all the way down to number 20. This one won't come as a huge surprise, but number 1 is Sabres defenseman Owen Power, who just recently left the University of Michigan, signed his pro contract after putting out 32 points in 33 games in college hockey. He signs and makes the jump to pro hockey. The number 1 overall selection in last year's NHL Draft. Looks more than NHL ready at 6'6". He certainly has capability of defending well on his own end and having a major impact offensively as well. You can tell when he's played for Canada at the World Juniors, World Championships, and at the Olympic Games that he's certainly more than capable of being ready to make that jump and having an immediate impact with the Buffalo Sabres. So he's certainly a great pick here for the top prospect overall, and we're going to get to see a little glimpse of this here at the end of this season. But next year, I would certainly suspect he'll be in the running for the Calder Trophy. At number 2, we have Sens defenseman Jake Sanderson, who himself recently left the University of North Dakota, signing his contract with the Ottawa Senators. Unfortunately, he's injured right now with a hand injury. Otherwise, we'd be getting a glimpse of him as well. Of course, his season was a little bit shortened this year due to other injuries he suffered, but had a very dominant college hockey season, putting up 26 points in 23 games. Of course, representing his country at multiple events here as well, including the World Juniors and the Olympic Games. Craig Button gives him a little bit of a comparison to Dallas Stars young star defenseman Muriel. And basically, Sanderson's known as a guy who can do it at both ends of the ice. I think he'll be a real solid top 4 defenseman for the Sens. Likely long-term or number 1 or number 2 defenseman on the team. Certainly very excited for Ottawa fans to get a future glimpse here, which hopefully will happen before the end of this year. They're optimistic he might be able to get a game or 2 in if his injury heals up in time. Number 3, we have Red Wings defenseman Simon Edvinsson, who was also a high pick in last year's NHL Draft. Of course, playing over in Sweden this year, putting up 19 points in 44 games. Gets a little bit of a comparison to Victor Hedman, but he's not expected to be the full package like Hedman on both ends of the ice, but he's big like Hedman. Can probably maybe defensively compare to him. He's kind of like a Victor Hedman, but not as much offensive output is kind of what they project for this young defenseman, but certainly another piece to add to the Detroit puzzle here in this rebuild moving forward. Number 4, we have Kent Johnson of the Blue Jackets, who again, like Power and Sanderson, left college hockey here just in the past little bit, signed his pro contract with Columbus, put up 37 points in 32 games this year, had a real solid college hockey season. It really expected to be an offensive dynamo and should project to be a top 6 forward here for the Columbus Blue Jackets. At number 5, we have Matty Beniers, the first ever draft pick for the Seattle Kraken. Again, another member for the University of Michigan team who fell short at the Frozen Four, but certainly Beniers had himself an awesome season, putting up 43 points in 37 games. Well regarded as a 200-foot player, good at both ends of the ice. Certainly should project to be a solid top 6 center for Seattle, taken number 2 in the draft last year after Owen Power. Beniers certainly had a good impact in his first NHL game, getting an assist, and it's only going to continue to get better from there. At number 6, we have the top goaltender on this list, and that's Jesper Wallstedt, the Swedish goalie, who's a Minnesota Wild draft pick, who I'm surprised went as low in the draft as he did last year. And I'm surprised a few teams like the Edmonton Oilers passed the opportunity to draft him. He fell to Minnesota, which in my opinion was a complete gift and a little bit of luck involved, because I really thought he would have won at least a few picks sooner than what he did. Playing in the SHL this year, he's putting up a .918 save percentage and a 1.98 goals against. Not quite sure exactly when he'll make the jump to North America, but considering where things are at with Minnesota, they recently traded young goaltender Kaden, of course, to San Jose. They have a couple of goalies with Fleury and Talbot, of course, are not exactly young at this point. So I would suspect in the next couple of years they're going to need a new, young, hopefully goaltender of the future to be taken over. And Wallstedt appears to be that guy. Goalies usually do take a little bit longer to develop, but I would think in a couple of years' time he should be ready to be a full-time NHL goaltender. At number 7, we have Ducks top prospect Mason McTavish. Of course, appeared in 9 NHL games this year, putting up 3 points. Had a real solid impact, including a couple goals. Had a real impactful season in the OHL. Of course, he was traded partway through the season, so he's played for a couple of different teams here. But has 46 points in 28 games. Appeared at the World Juniors as well as the Olympics for Canada. Obviously, he's a big power forward kind of center iceman. In my opinion, with the Ducks, and considering their captain Ryan Getzlaf is retiring, I would think that there is a potential of all the prospects and young players in the Ducks system. I can see a real scenario where he, in a few years, no rush by any means, but he could be a future captain of that team. He's great leadership skills, not to mention an incredibly talented offensive player who's very mature size-wise, and his on-ice play is phenomenal. So to me, he's a real solid player. I would probably put him, to be honest, a little bit higher on this list. If I had to pick, I would take McTavish over Beniers and Johnston when amongst the forwards. That's just my opinion, but he's a player that I've been real high on here for a while. At number 8, we have Sabres forward Jack Quinn. Of course, Jack Quinn also had a real solid OHL season for the Ottawa 67s before being drafted. This year's been playing in the American Hockey League and having a phenomenal year, putting up 56 points in 38 games. The Sabres have been content to leave him down there the majority of the year, which has been real good for his development. He appears to be a real solid future goal-scoring winger. Hard to say exactly where he'll slot, because he can play a bit on special teams too, so we'll see, or at least he has before in junior. But Jack Quinn's had a real solid development year for the Sabres, and of course, as I mentioned, there's 5 teams that have 2 players on this list, but the Buffalo Sabres are the only team to have 2 players in the top 10. Now, of course, next up at number 9, we have Wyatt Johnston of the Dallas Stars. Now, to me, he's probably going to turn out to be a draft steal, or at least he's projecting that way right now. When he was drafted, he put up 30 points in 53 games his draft year before being taken by the Dallas Stars. And now this year in the OHL, the Windsor Spitfires, he's got 123 points in 66 games. You do expect players in that league to get stronger and put up better numbers as they get a little bit older and more mature. But that is a significant jump, drastic jump, in fact. So Johnson has had some major big strides developmental-wise this year. And like I said, it could be a steal for the Stars if that continues and he pans out at the NHL level the way he looks right now in junior. At number 10, we have another defenseman, the third Hughes brothers, Luke Hughes, defenseman for New Jersey, of course, who will be returning to school. Luke Hughes, like his brother Quinn, is playing for the University of Michigan. Will be at least one more year before making the jump to the NHL. Had a real solid year, and he's going to continue to push his obviously college education and college play here as they continue to search for a national championship there. But we do expect him to be a very impactful defenseman once he eventually makes the jump. At number 11, we have Brandt Clarke of the Los Angeles Kings. Of course, a pretty high draft pick himself. An offensive defenseman, very gifted in that regard. Certainly has a bit of work to do defending his own end. Putting up a solid year in the OHL again, 59 points in 55 games played. A player who I fully suspected to make Team Canada for the World Juniors, but unfortunately did not make the cut. But certainly a player that's still pretty high on LA's prospect list. He is going to have a lot of competition, though. They have a very, very deep prospect pool, and will have a lot of stiff competition and become a regular at the NHL level, but he's still a real solid offensive defenseman that will get a lot of opportunities here in the not too distant future. Number 12, we have Rangers prospect left winger Brennan Othmann, of course, another OHL member, good friends with Brandt Clarke and Mason McTavish. They all kind of grew up pretty close together, playing against each other and being teammates at times as well. Othmann is certainly having a solid year for Flint, 93 points in 64 games. Of course, at this point where he was drafted a little bit lower in the first round as well, I'm not sure he's going to be strong enough to call him a draft steal, but he is projecting to put up some pretty solid offensive numbers when he eventually gets his NHL opportunity here. At number 13, we have the Red Wings prize goaltending prospect Sebastian Cossa, who's drawing some comparisons to like a Vasilevsky. Now, no guarantees he's turned out to be that good, but just the way he plays and his size and everything just kind of draws a bit of a comparison to him amongst other NHL great goalies. Right now in the WHL, he's putting up a save percentage of .911 and a 2.33 goals against in 45 games. Cossa, along with Jesper Wallstedt, were both taken, middle to the second half of the first round there in last year's draft. And to me, I was surprised that some teams that really needed the goaltending depth in their organization didn't take either of these guys sooner. I think they're both going to work out to be stud goalies in the not too distant future here. Number 14, we have Arizona Coyotes winger Dylan Guenther. Dylan Guenther is a pure goal scorer. Should be a pretty solid player here for the Coyotes. He has 45 goals and 90 points playing in the Western Hockey League this year for the Edmonton Oil Kings. Guenther likely will get an opportunity to play in Arizona as early as next year, given where their roster is at and the fact that he's certainly going to be too good for junior hockey, in my opinion. Number 15, we have Alexander Holtz, a Swedish prospect from the New Jersey Devils, who, of course, because he's from Europe, had an opportunity to play in the American Hockey League rather than go back to play junior hockey league. Some of the Canadian players have to do. But Holtz is having a real solid developmental year with the Devils AHL affiliate, putting up 47 points in 47 games. And like Dylan Guenther, both these guys are known for their goal-scoring abilities. Great shot, great release. Certainly when they were, both in their draft year, were kind of looked upon as being two of the probably most pure goal scorers in the draft class. So the Devils have a lot to be optimistic about moving forward. Of course, they also have Luke Hughes on this list, not to mention some of the other great young talent they already have in their lineup. And Holtz looks like I would not be surprised if he gets more of a full-time opportunity as early as next year. At number 16, we have Blues top prospect Zachary Bolduc, center iceman from the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, playing for the Quebec Ramparts, putting up a real solid numbers here at 86 points in 57 games. Of course, he along with Jake Neighbors would be their next top prospect. Of course, Neighbors actually had more of a look at the NHL this year, but I think long term, I think many still kind of project Bolduc to have a little bit more of a little more offensive upside down the road. But Neighbors just might surprise us and might be up there or even better than Bolduc long term. Time will tell. Number 17, we have Marco Rossi for the Minnesota Wild. Rossi was a pretty high draft pick. Of course, had a real tough year last year, which is I think is the main reason he's not higher up on this list. He had a real long battle with COVID, which he endured a lot of complications from. Took him a long time to recover and get back to playing hockey, but now looks to be, obviously having a good season and full stride, putting up 50 points in 57 games at the American Hockey League for the Iowa Wild. So certainly having a real solid year because the Wild were having a solid year at the NHL level and pretty deep roster that way. There wasn't a lot of opportunity. Rossi and Boldy were the main two players, kind of determined for, a little bit of a time at the NHL level and getting a bit more sporadic action. Boldy's been getting more of that opportunity where Rossi's pretty well stayed, for the most part, at the AHL level, had a chance to really work on his game, and it looks like it's proven to be wise here as it's paying off for him. 18, we have Senators prospect, center iceman Ridley Greig, again, another Western Hockey League player, real solid guy, putting up 63 points in 39 games played. Ridley Greig is a guy who's kind of crosses the line a little bit. He plays very much a physical style of game, known to get the odd suspension for kind of walking on the line, sometimes crossing over it. Many feel Ridley Greig will have actually a real solid shot at making the NHL next year. Because of the lack of opportunity in junior hockey last year because of the COVID shutdowns, he did play a fair bit in the American Hockey League for Belleville and looked really solid. So to me, Ridley Greig likely projects with the Senators prospect pool the way it is. He's probably looking at a middle six role, maybe third line role down the road. Don't know if he has quite the offensive upside as some of the other prospects we've talked about here today, but his overall game should prove to be pretty solid and be a real good NHL player. At number 19, we have Nashville Predators winger Luke Evangelista, another guy who could prove to be a draft steal, but sometimes you have to, watch these junior numbers. It doesn't always translate into big-time NHL production. But right now, he has 111 points for the London Knights in the OHL this year in 62 games played, whereas last year when he was drafted, he had basically at a point per game pace at 61 in 62 games. So a big step forward, which is what you want to see. But I've seen all kinds of 100-plus point seasons in the junior leagues in Canada not translate to be a regular NHL player. So it looks good. You want to see it, but it's not a given. But some of these guys, like I said, we'll see here between guys like Evangelista and Othman and, some of these other players that were kind of looked upon as being a bit of a steal, like Wyatt Johnston. Time will tell. It looks good, but it's not a given. And last but not least, we have number 20. We have Habs defenseman Kaden Guhle. Guhle's put up 40 points in 47 games played this year. Looks like he should be a real solid left-handed defenseman for the Habs for many years to come. Guhle will join a bunch of other young, promising defensemen in Montreal, including recently signed Jordan Harris. Of course, you get Alex Romanov, and Guhle will join the mix there. Of course, got good size, some offensive upside as well, but a real solid two-way defenseman. Of course, had a brief opportunity for Team Canada at the World Juniors before that tournament was unfortunately shut down early. Would suspect he'll get another opportunity when the tournament resumes later this summer. Those are your top 20 NHL affiliated prospects for now. As I mentioned, this list from Craig Button contained the top 50 and his opinion, of course. So we'll see. We may do a part 2 or 3 to talk about the remaining prospects, but those are your top 20. I want to know which players you're most excited about. Do you agree or disagree with the list? Let me know where you'd rank some of these players and what you expect of them here in the near future. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.